Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and this time I am speaking with John from the Basement Surge podcast. Hey John, thanks for speaking with me today.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Basically, I mean, as far as I've got, because we're going to probably reiterate this again in a moment, but where I've got to in your show, it's still yourself and your friend Frank doing the show. And basically you just talk about, it seems like you just talk about, is it like you're coming up to a new episode and then you just talk about what is on your minds at that moment?
Pretty much. I mean, that's how the show originated. You know, we were looking for a new hobby, you know, and something to do together. And, you know, so I was like, hey, let's try podcasting. And that's what we did. You know, I did all the research. I read all the articles, watched all the videos on YouTube, you know, and did so much research into the type of microphone and all the different tech and everything I needed to start. So it took about a month, I think, to get everything together and actually do the episode. And we started in February 7th. We dropped our first episode, and you know, we loved it. You know, we were hooked, and it's so much fun.
So, what was your introduction to podcast in the first place? Then, how were you introduced to the world? Were you a big podcast listener and lover?
No, I wasn't actually. You know, I had never listened to a single podcast. You know, everybody goes on and on about Joe Rogan. You know, I had never listened to an episode of Rogan beforehand. You know, and it's just, you know, I always liked the audio medium, and I've always wanted to get into radio hosting and radio shows and all that. So, So I wanted to try it with him, you know, and it worked out. But I do have to say that ever since I started podcasting, I still don't really listen to podcasts. You know, I listen to I listen to a lot of my friends' shows, you know, because I've made a lot of connections within the industry, and you know, I listen to a lot of my friends' shows and help promote and bring up the independent scene.
Okay, so I don't know whether to delve. Is there any further we could delve into the show history? And so, I mean, let's actually touch on this. So, initially, it started as yourself and Frank, and it's developed since then more because refined, or people will find if they listen to the archive that over time there's difficulty because of Frank's job. He's not always available to make the shows as much, but he still shows up on the show every now and again. So basically it started as just two long time friends having a chat together with each other and a catch up.
Yeah, well, you know, Frank and I, the way it started, like we couldn't think of one particular topic to talk about. You know, everything that I had been reading and watching was telling me that I had to niche down to one specific topic. And I couldn't do that because I loved video games. I love movies. I love comic books. I love, you know, all these different things and that I wanted to talk about on the show. And I didn't want to not talk about certain topics just because it doesn't go with the theme of the show. So we decided to start the general discussion podcast, where it's just basically two lifelong friends. I know Frank now for, I want to say 25 years, almost 30 years. And, you know, it's a long time. And Frank and I have been best friends since the beginning. And I was like, hey, you know, we have good chemistry on air and on the microphones, and it was good. And we talked a lot about how memories and growing up here in Brooklyn, New York, and what it was like, and just things that we love to do, and and it works out great, and it was funny because
Yep.
the teamwork that Frank and I had, he was more of the brash kind of outspoken, cursing, abrasive host, where I was the more reserved, like, all right, leveling him out, bringing the show back to where it belongs, kind of thing. And so that was my role in the show. And and we made a great team.
Well, first of all, I'll respond with. I mean, when you've got a two-headed show, you've got two people or more than one person actually doing a show. That's a good thing. Is when you've got you've got people who have similarities to each other in some ways that get on, but they have differences in other ways. Because if you have people in a show that are all exactly the same as each other, there's not as much there to grab people in. I think you need different characters to actually make a multi-presented show more interesting, because then you get different sides to or different opinions on subjects occasionally, and that's what makes the interesting thing that pulls you into a show.
I mean, absolutely. He would say things, that were so outlandish, and I'd just be like, oh my God, like, like, and I would have to come back at him, and try to bring him back, be like, all right, like, but it worked out, I think it was a good team effort, with both of us hosting it.
I've got this image now of you. You could do it as a cartoon, couldn't you, or as a comic strip where it's you and you've got Frank there, possibly like one of these children that you've got reins on that you have to sort of like rein them in after a while. It's like, hello, behave, come on, come back to this.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because not to put Frank down at all, but it's like sometimes I'd get comments on the side saying, well, he was too much, or like he's got to watch what he says. And and it's hard to get guests on the show with a co-host like that, because the downside of him being him is that sometimes some people don't like that. Sometimes guests aren't like that. They don't have that kind of sense of humor. They don't have that kind of attitude, and and they wound up walking away from the surge with a bad taste, and I don't want that.
Wow.
And at the same time, it's hard getting advertisers, like trying to monetize the show was very difficult.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I had chats with him about, where, listen, we have a guest on, you got to calm down, relax, and and he would, he'd listen. If you listened to Frank from season 1 all the way to season 4 or 5, it's totally different. Like, he's more reserved, he's more calmed.
Okay. I mean, you find the same problem with a lot of media. I mean, that's why they have restrictions with normal radio, for instance, and television as well, where you find that, I mean, we find in the UK that when we have late television shows on, because of the nature of them having, language in and things like this, there's not as much advertising in some of these shows. It's almost as if, we don't want our adverts to be in these shows because it's not the image that we want to put across with our product, in a sense. And you can sort of see why in some ways, but it's a strange situation, because with those sort of shows, sometimes that's where you find the more creative or the more interesting content coming from, in some ways, because you've got that level of emotion in there, or that level of reaction in there that causes these things.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of opportunities to actually be on the radio. We've been approached a couple times. We were on radio up in Canada for a time, and also in the Midwest. And but I would need to edit out Frank's cursing, and if you've watched the show before, it's like Frank would never talk, so and it would be disingenuous. It would be disingenuous to the show and bring down the value of what the Surge was about at the time, so
it'd be like trying to edit down a Quentin Tarantino film to show it in the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll have no film left.
That's what I was trying to get to. It's like I wanted to keep the show the same. I didn't want to censor Frank. I didn't want anything to do like that. And but at the same time, that's what limited us to expanding and growing.
Yep. With my show, I've had the same sort of thing with some of the guests that I have on. Like when the one that really jumps to mind would be when I had the guys from Bad Counsel. I don't know if you know them, but when they were on my show, I had to make a serious decision then as to, because up until then there was no cursing in my show at all, from any of the guests that I'd had or myself. But because my show, I'm trying to be almost like a soft introduction to these shows that I'm having on as guest. In a way, I had to make the decision then of, what do I do about this? Do I sort of stifle what their show is to match this, or no cursing, no this, no, or whatever of my show? And then I just went out with it and I just said, right, you know what? Let's just merge the two shows together. You do what you do because it's an introduction to your show. And then I just put an expletive warning on. So that's how it changed from then. So I had the same thing, but in a way that means that then my show, for a lot of the time, I can't be put onto radio as well for some of my shows because there is bad language in them, where I just let them, basically the guest, be who they are.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to kind of censor them to the point where you don't get a true sense of their character, of what the show is about,
Yeah, but I don't want to alienate them at the same time, where if they're coming on the show, and it became a joke when before that episode, there's this little thing online where somebody said, "Oh, Marv with no language in his show, and it's always clean," and it became, and it was sort of like I felt as though they weren't wanting to come onto my show because they had this understanding that, because it's like that, is going to be stopping me from being able to be who I am. And I thought, even then, I'm going to have to just accept that people are who they are. I mean, even I curse from time to time, but.
Well, sure. I mean, so do I. I mean, if you've listened to the solo episodes of Basement Surge that I've done, I'm sure I've cursed in them. Like I curse every time, all the time, really. But it's like I'm making a conscious decision now because this isn't my show. This is your show. So I'm making a conscious decision to not use profanity. So at the same time, it kind of says, have a little respect for the show that you're on, kind of,
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't want to make people uncomfortable, which I know you're not uncomfortable being like that anyway.
Right. Yeah, I can go either way. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah. So what sort of research do you do then before you do a show, and how do you choose what subjects you're going to discuss? Because when I've listened, there's been like general talk between yourselves, and then you go into a subject in a way. Like when you've done the James Gunn, I'm guessing when you did that discussion, that you had a conversation between you, catch up, I've been doing this has happened in my life, and then you transition over to the subject.
Right. Well, there's kind of a format to the Basement Surge, right? So when I first decided to start Surge, I didn't want it to be like every other podcast out there, right? What I wanted it to be more like was a TV show. Okay, you have, when the episode starts, you have the intro and then the theme song, really, and then once that's over, then you start getting into the episode. You do all your introductions, you do, hey, follow us here, follow us there, so hit subscribe, all that, and then what we like to do after that was to really catch up with each other from what happened during the week, the past 2 weeks or whatever. Just we played a little catch up. And then once the catch up was over, and then we got into the meat of the episode. And what I like to do is that I didn't script out every episode, but I have an episode planner that I do every single episode. And I have just bullet points. I have the welcome back to the Basement Surge. Yeah, kind of like you do. I have on the paper. I have the welcome back to the Basement Surge, and maybe a few points that I want to talk about within the intro, and then bullet points on the topic, the meat of the episode, and what we're going to talk about. And then at the bottom, I have like the outro. Things I don't want to forget to mention, to promote. Stuff like that. So I do quite a bit of research, or I like to sometimes, do a lot of research, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. A lot of the episodes that we do, like that James Gunn episode, was really off the cuff, because Frank and I, we know comic books like the back of our hands. We grew up loving them. So we didn't have to really do too much research. But what had happened at the time of the episode when it came out, James Gunn had recently taken over, and he had fired Henry Cavill as Superman. He made all these changes within the DC universe, and we felt the need to get the word out that we weren't liking what's happening. So we made the episode, and that's how that episode came about. But there are a lot of episodes where, especially the first, I want to say 4 seasons, I really sat down and planned out each and every episode basically like a month or 2 in advance. So I had everything planned out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Whereas me, on my first episode, I contacted the first one of the guests, Robbie from Out of the Blank. And I said, I'm starting this show, blah, blah, blah. And would you like to be on it as a guest? And this, that, and the other. So I had the idea of starting the show a week or 2 down the line. And then he just looked at what notes I'd got, and he said, I'm up for this. He said, I'll start the chat now and we'll do your show now. So there's me thinking, I'm going to start a week or 2 down the line.
Right.
And suddenly it's, no, we'll do it now. I don't mind recording this now.
Yeah.
So that caught me out. But in a sense, no matter what you do with podcast, there's that moment where you have to make that decision, and you have to it's almost like cliff diving, where eventually you have to jump.
Yeah, it really is.
And it is almost like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is, because I remember the first time Frank and I ever sat down to record, and it was after work. So it was like a little bit late at night, and, we're just sitting in my kitchen, and we're getting our drinks ready, and to come down here to the basement studio, and I was like, all right, you ready? Let's do it. And we came down here, we sat at the table, and we just hit record, and I was like, all right, because I had done a lot of research, like I said, and I had kind of known how I wanted the show's format to be. So I kind of knew that, like, all right, the first episode has to be like an introduction episode, to us and who we are and kind of thing, So that's kind of like where the welcome back to the Basement Surge thing came from, because I said it in the beginning, in the first episode. I was like, hey guys, welcome to the Basement Surge, kind of like that, like old plain Jane. Now I'm like, welcome back, like I yell it in the beginning of every episode. And I get a little nuts, so it's like, but so the things evolve. You find your groove. You're a little uncomfortable at first. You're hitting the microphone boom arm. You're hitting the mic. You're touching things, and it's just, you work all that out, and you get better as the episodes go on.
Yep, and you get more, like you said, you get livelier when you first start. But then again, do you find that? I mean, I do it sometimes. I've done it on a seasonal basis where I've taken a break for a while and then come back. Do you find that when you come back, it's almost like you have to grow back into it again? Or is it, for you, is it natural that you're just in the zone straight away?
Well, we're approaching 100 episodes, right? And so we've done this a while, and because not many podcasts actually reach the milestone of 100 episodes. But at the same time, we also do video. We do live streaming on Facebook, live stream on YouTube, and so I'm used to the camera, And it was funny because last summer I had taken 6 months off from the show, and I was kind of like depressed. Like I wanted to get back. I needed to get back. It was like an addiction. I need to get back in front of the camera and in front of the microphone. Like I need to do this, right? And when I finally came back, it was like I came back like it was yesterday. I was so comfortable in front of the mic. I missed it so much, and I had that excitement, that energy back, and it was great. For me, it wasn't awkward at all, or to try to get back into the groove. No, I never got out of the groove.
No. I don't think I go away long enough to be out of the groove. I get. The last time I did it, I was going to take a break, and I found even after a week, I was like, oh, I'm bored. I've got to put something out. And then that's when I created They Need to Come Back Again after I got back, because I was poorly and I stopped doing the shows while I was poorly. Luckily, I had a backlog of episodes to put out, and somebody actually stood up and said, I'll do a couple of episodes for you, which was great. Shout out to Sean from Review It Yourself for covering for 2 episodes.
Great job, Sean.
Yeah, he did a fabulous job. But then I picked subjects that were close to him in a sense for him to chat about, because he's a reader. One was about books and the other one was about audio drama, and he loves both. So it sort of fitted with him in a sense. So I started doing something called the Pod Files, which was basically 10 to 20 minute long, just me talking about things that stood out in pods that I've listened to. So I basically came up with that because I was bored and I wanted to put content out, and I just got addicted to the podcasting thing. I was going to lead into something then, and I can't remember what it was. But so you do these conversations with people, between, or on your show. I mean, now it's a one-header and you talk to people, but then again, you had the guest in the episode before. How do you pick the guest, and how do you then arrange for them to get on the show?
Well, normally it's me. If I'm in, how do I word this? If I need a quick guest for an episode because I'm either running out of time or it's close to another episode dropping, I have a couple of friends that I can call on that I know in the podcasting world who run other shows. Be like, hey, come on my show. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. So I have a bunch of friends that I can call on from various podcasts. As far as setting up other guests from people I don't know, it's really just about reaching out. You find certain people, interesting people on socials, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, and you just message them. That's what I do. If I find that they're interesting, that I like, that usually they're other podcasters, so I'll like their show. I'll listen to their show already, and I'll be like, hey, you guys want to come on? Let's just talk about this and cross promote. And that's basically it.
I've just realised you're talking about earlier on about the love of being comics, so I've just realised I'm wearing a Loki t-shirt, in case that means anything to anybody.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. I'm baseball, my Los Angeles Dodgers t-shirt. So.
Yep. Who used to be the Dodgers? Which part were they the Brooklyn Dodgers?
Yeah, the Brooklyn Dodgers back in 1957.
Yep. And then they moved to LA.
I know.
Baseball, Traders. One of my favourite sports. So how do you record? Well, it'd be different, would it, each time? So when you were recording with Frank or with your daughter, and then you've had your wife on as well, you'll record in the studio there with them, I'm guessing. 2 mics, I'm guessing you've got, and then you just do it that way, record there. And then, so how do you record those shows, and how do you record the shows that you have guest on?
Well, I have the camera set up here, you know, because we do it as a vodcast. We have a YouTube channel. So I set it up, and I have this whole set behind me, like you can see. And, you know, it's just, I have 2 mics. I have another 3 mics here in the studio, so we can just sit around the table here and just chat. But if I have another guest on that can't come into the studio or who's in another state or whatever, you know, we do it on StreamYard normally. And then, you know, and then I just record it on StreamYard, kind of like what we're doing now. And, you know, and then there's a whole production process.
I mean, listening to your sound, you've got, have you got baffling in place and that? Because it's got there's no echo there at all. It's a nice sound, not like me at all. I've got no sound thing at all in this room at the moment. You can hear my echo
I don't
through your headphones.
Yeah, well, I don't like it. It sounds like you're in a big room, but for me, I don't. If you see, I don't have any soundproofing on the walls. I don't have any of the padding or nothing. But what I do have is a lot of crap around the studio. So because it's not that big of a room either. You know, the ceilings I can touch them here. I could touch the ceilings just sitting here. And so it's kind of a relatively small room, and it doesn't give a lot of room for the sound to bounce around, and it sounds good. Plus, I'm running on an SM7B here through into a Rodecaster, which helps a lot with the filtering.
Right. You know, I'm going to ask this now. Is it called the Basement Surge because you're recording in a basement, or is there another reason for the name of the show?
The Basement Surge, the name came about because, again, when Frank and I started it, you know, me and Frank wanted to name the show after something we loved. This basement, this room, this studio was the hangout for us when we were kids. Okay. When we were 15, 16 years old, we used to hang out and spend every day down here. We used to play games. We did everything down here. So I wanted to name it Basement something. And, you know, and then we came up with Surge because Surge was a popular soda back in the 90s made by Coca-Cola. Yep. And we drank that basically exclusively back in the 90s. And so that's where it came from, the Basement Surge, the place where we loved and the drink that we loved, we put it together.
Yeah, because in one of the episodes, you actually joke about it and mentioned that you went from Surge to drinking something called Volt.
Yeah, Volt. It was a knockoff of Surge. They tried to bring it back, but I think the reason why they took Surge off the market was because moms were complaining that it had too much sugar or caffeine or something for the kids. So, and back in those days, I don't think they had really energy drinks at those times.
No, and nowadays you find kids wandering around drinking Red Bull and all those things all the time now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a can of Surge back there. I have 2 of them, but yeah, I bought them on Amazon, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. Can't find. There you are.
Here I am. Jinxed it. Jinxed it with that comment earlier.
Yep.
So where did the music come from for the show?
The music I had gotten from Epidemic Sounds, and I had downloaded it. I bought it. I have the license for it, so I can legitimately use it. So after I got the music, I was like, well, it's kind of too plain, you know. So I added my voice. I recorded my voice saying, welcome back to the Basement Surge, you know, and I distorted it a little bit. I made it deeper and, you know, kind of like announcer-ish, you know, during the theme. And it worked out for a time, but but then I found a service from London that that offers professional voiceover work. And so then I basically wrote out what I wanted them to say, and they sent it back to me like a radio jingle, which is what the theme is today. And I mixed everything up. I put everything together. I edited it, and it came out great. And I will probably never change it.
Well, when you've got a good voiceover artist to do it, then you won't do, will you? Really?
Yeah. I think what I've tried to do since the beginning with the Basement Surge is I've tried to make the show sound as professional and bigger than what we actually are, so so we give off the more professional vibe, like, hey, these guys know what they're talking about, like.
Well, it's definitely got that feel to it, that it's not slick in any way, but it has that sort of feel to it where it's organized. Like you said, you can go to it. It's almost like a good magazine show, for instance, where you'll have the introduction, you'll have the topic itself, discuss that, or the many topics, and then you have the end chat that then leads into the outro. And that's just, that is really well produced, and you can hear it in the sound as well. It's got a good mix to it. It's well edited as well, because I'm guessing there's some editing involved every now and again as well to probably clean
every episode
breaks up. Every episode, because no matter what, you will almost always have gaps if you're just chatting normally without. I mean, I'm guessing that Frank used to probably just react normally and didn't do much research. It sounds like he's just responding on the spot. So then you'll have a lot of gaps between things while he's thinking of what to say, or while either of you are thinking of how to respond to, because I'm guessing that occasionally Frank would say something and then you'll be a few seconds thinking, now, how do I react to what he's just said? But those bits are clipped out, those gaps, so that you've not got so much pause.
Yeah, that happens. That does happen on Surge, but that happens with like other guests that I have on the show. Because and I want to say maybe it happened maybe once or twice with me and Frank, but Frank is very like on the spot. Like if you prompt him, if you set him up to say something or to joke about something, he's right there. Like there is no awkwardness. So it's like he and I would just feed off each other, and it was great because there was really no editing in the sense where you have to take out the awkward silences and the ums and all that, because it's just once Frank gets started, like there's no stopping it.
Like the toy that you pull the cord on and it just carries on like that.
Yeah, exactly, just like that.
Exactly. So, and then the logo as well is very bright, and it too without explaining, it does actually tell you what to expect in a way. It's a strange thing about a logo that things do that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I mean, I designed that logo, and I created it from scratch. There were many iterations of it before we started. Things that I wanted to change, things that I thought really, the first model of the logo, I had a goat on it, and I was like, all right, well, let's get rid of the goat. This just needs to be like a title or something for the show. And I wanted it to be bright. I wanted it to be in your face. I wanted it to be, excitable, because, and I kept with the theme of the green, blacks, and the reds, and which is basically the color of Surge, the soda. It's green, so that's where that came from. So I mean, the logo, I think, just went under another iteration because I'm currently on the rebrand. So I updated it a little bit. I modernized it a little bit. I took away the microphone because there used to be a microphone in the logo. And I took that out because I feel that the Basement Surge is more than just a podcast. You know, we do so much more. We do vodcasting. We have a YouTube channel. We do live streaming. We do gaming. You know, so and we do fundraisers. We work with the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. So, you know, there's just a whole bunch of different things than just podcasting that the Basement Surge does.
Well, I don't know if this means anything, but I'll thank you on behalf of the people that, you know, you're bringing, that you're doing that for, the charity that you're doing, because that's an incredible thing that you're doing there. Are there any standout episodes that you've made that you know come to mind where you think, wow, that was really special?
We did a 12-hour live stream one time for DC Comics was running a live stream of their own on social media called DC Fandom, the first one that they had ever come out with. And I decided, all right, I'm going to make a big deal about this because, you know, we love comics. I'm going to make a big deal about this. And for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to promote the hell out of this show. And I'm going to say, join the Basement Surge live for DC Fandom come this time, you know. And I built it up for 3 weeks. And it was awesome because we went live just before the show started. And we stayed live during the whole entire show. And it was the longest live stream I had ever done. It was the longest production I've ever done because not only was I managing multiple guests that were coming on the show live on StreamYard, but I was also managing the stream as far as DC Fandom because I was simulcasting the actual convention on my show. So, which is not advised. So I got a copyright strike for that one.
I did wonder because, you know, DC, Marvel even more so, but yeah, you go into those areas. It's like with music. If you use Beatles music or James Brown music or Prince, they're on you like no one's really. So their takes on. When you you know going into something completely different now and just general chit chat. Sure. You were speaking earlier on about the James Gunn situation with DC. And I will say that when he was made, I was a bit not too sure about the situation with him with the DC films.
Yeah.
But we watched the new Guardians of the Galaxy film last week, number 3. Okay. I mean, have you seen it yet?
No, I haven't seen it.
I don't think I could touch this then. I was going to say that I watched the film, and as someone who is a lover of comics, I read comics when I was a kid, and I still have them. I've got they're in storage. I haven't got enough room in this house for all the comics I've got. But I think there's a lot of people like that, and so I watched the film last week, and I've got a bit questionable about the Marvel films recently, where I think there's almost like a set pattern to the films now where you can almost predict that this will happen here, then you'll get this, and this, and it's like a set, you know, a thing that they'll follow. You'll do this, and then you get the big fight at the end, and then a resolution with some message or something's happened at the end, and you think, and I think they've got a bit tired with it in a sense, but I found with the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 that I watched last week, I was surprised because I was getting a bit tired of that. I thought Quantumania was not a good film, really, for the most part. I actually think that Shang-Chi was probably the most interesting of all the films that they've put out recently, from my own point of view.
Shang-Chi was good.
Yeah, but Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I was surprised by. And after watching that, I thought, I've got a little bit more faith in James Gunn in a sense, because there's more emotion in that film than I was expecting.
Right. Okay. I just did an episode which with the two guys from Dad and Rock. Okay, and Sean from Dad and Rock says, which I agree with him. He said that he thinks that the world is over the superhero movie genre. Like I think like it's been done. It's overdone. You know, like they need to reinvent it somehow and try to bring it back. Because I had recently done an episode with these two guys from Dad and Rock where we spoke about the DC universe and the Marvel universes and where the movies are going. And you know, as far as James Gunn is concerned, I don't particularly like him very much. I have personally, I have a problem with DC bringing over Marvel executives to work on DC properties. Okay, because they're two different universes, two different looks, two different writing styles. That's just, you know, what had happened with Superman Returns with Brandon Routh, and you know, they brought over Bryan Singer and to direct, and then they had Cyclops. He brought over Cyclops to the movie, you know, and I was like, well, it feels more like a Marvel movie than it does a DC movie. And I'm afraid that that's what James Gunn is going to do to the universe. You know, I feel like he's going to put his Marvel stamp on it, and it's going to be too cartoony, kind of too mutantish, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think the film studio, I think Warner Brothers, it's almost as though Warner Brothers have seen what's happened with the Marvel thing with Disney, and they've thought to themselves, "Oh, we want a piece of that with what we own with DC."
Right.
And in a sense, it's like the people who own the film, who are in charge of all the films, the Warner Brothers. It's like they don't understand the differences between the two. Like you said, they are completely different. When I was a kid reading Batman, I wasn't expecting Batman to be like the Spider-Man or the X-Men comics that I was reading as a kid. I never expected them to be that similar to each other at all, because DC had their sort of more serious side to it, in a sense. Whereas Marvel had a bit more of a jokey thing going with it back then. And as a comic book lover, I could see that even as a kid, that they were different completely. I'd be in a Spider-Man mood or I'd be in a Batman mood. The two do not work together, in a sense.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes film executives and corporate executives don't realize that there is that difference, and they're trying to get a piece of this pie by using something that shouldn't mutate that way.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? I can probably put any amount of money down and say that the guys who are running the movie studios aren't true comic book fans. Like, they're not following the books. They don't know anything about the histories of the books. And you know, it's just it's hard because you have to have a comic book nerd who makes these movies. And I don't think that's what we have.
Yep. I mean, I haven't seen the film yet. I've not seen the film Bloodshot with Vin Diesel, but the Valiant comics that I've read, that's completely different, because there's a certain, when I've read the Valiant comics, there's almost a realism to the violence that's in those comics. And from the advertisements and the trailers that I've seen of the Bloodshot film with Vin Diesel in, it's almost like they're trying to go for that Marvel sort of feel as well with it, and they're missing that almost like 15 plus age look that Valiant comics have. And all these different people who own these properties, they are trying to make them feel like Marvel films when, like I said, they don't know what they've actually got there.
Right. Yeah. They're trying to just copy Marvel's business model, I think, you know, and but yeah, DC's had some great success within the animated movies. Like their cartoon movies are fantastic. I love them. But as far as their cinematic universe, it's slacking because they keep putting the wrong people in charge.
Yeah. But what other subjects have we got at the moment? I was hoping that people would send in some, have a talk about this, have a talk about that.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Oh, go on then.
What's your take on the King's coronation? Were you celebrating or?
I was in bed asleep between shifts.
Oh. Okay.
But I got woken up by my other half who was watching it and telling me all about it. But it's difficult. It's I was talking with people about it. Even people in this country question, the whole thing with monarchy. It's a big subject at the moment with the monarchy, and should there really be a monarchy and these sort of things. And I was explaining to somebody that as much as I'm not a royalist in any way, shape, or form as a Brit, I said you've got to understand that all these years of all of that, even if they get paid that, it's weird because if we lost that monarchy, then you'd lose you'd destabilize all of the other things that you get of it. So you've got the Tower of London that's linked to the monarchy. You've got all these houses and castles and these places all over the country, which are traps for tourism, essentially. Right. And they make a hell of a lot of money from that tourism that comes as a part of the royalty. And I said, so if you lost the royalty, you'd possibly lose all of that tourism as well that comes of it. Because I said, it's amazing how I'll talk to people from other countries and they don't realize that there's anywhere else. Some people don't realize that there's anywhere else other than London or the surrounding London area in England. They'll just think, well, London, I don't know anywhere else, or they'll think Nottingham must be a few hours, must be an hour away or so from London at the most, and not realise that it's actually further away. They'll have these little. It's like people will think, oh, America. Some people might just think, well, New York, California, LA, this, that, and the other, and not know the whole thing. It's weird. So I said, like I said, if you lost that, you'd lose all of the tourism, all of the billions of pounds that makes. But I mean, it's not going to be, I don't think it will be the last coronation that we see in our lifetime. That's for sure. I think we'll see William being coronated in the next, 20 years at least.
Yeah, that could be exciting.
So we can argue about it then as well. But he's more popular with the people anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're getting really, really into the weeds with this, I question the whole thing of. I mean, they've changed it now, where essentially people were chosen for people to get married to in a way, or they were very choosy. Yeah. And so they had a relationship way back when they were young adults or, older teenagers or whatever Charles and Camilla did. Mm-hmm. If you look into the history of it all. Right. And then it was not allowed by the people that were, saying to them, oh, you can't be in a relationship with them because that person is not this. And luckily, recently they've got rid of that, which is why you have, you've got Harry married to Meghan and you've got William married to Kate. But, if there wasn't that back then, because we had that problem with the king that was, he had to abdicate because he got married to somebody that wasn't right in the eyes of those that were in charge. Right. If you didn't have all of that stupidity there, none of this would be here. You wouldn't have these arguments of, oh, I don't like Charles because this isn't this. Right. If they had not pushed on him that he couldn't be together, none of that business with Diana, etc., would have happened because that relationship would never have been forced in a sense to start with.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's years and years of, pomp and tradition, and we just have to put up with these things. It's like the ridiculous voting system, I suppose, that we have in countries as well. How they work, who knows?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're actually voting for anything, but that's another episode.
I think whoever you vote for, you're going to get the same outcome anyway a lot of the time now.
Yeah.
We're going into politics there, aren't we?
Yeah. So what else you got?
I was going to say the problem with politics is that over the years it changed so that the people in charge are rich, and they will always try and maneuver political, decisions around what will make them richer, in a sense.
Right. I totally agree.
That's why you've still got gun control the way that it is, because they make a hell of a lot of money from that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just shout out that there was a really good video of Jon Stewart going around about that I've seen a few times recently, where he questioned somebody from the government about.
Really?
Have you seen this? Where he questioned them about them going on about transsexuals and people dressing up, in drag, basically in schools.
No, and
they were trying to outlaw. They were outlawing that, and then Jon Stewart basically said to him, "So you think that's bad for kids?" And he said, and then the politician said, "Well, yes, I do. I do think we ought to outlaw that, because it's not right for kids to do that. Eventually, they'll make their own decisions, blah, 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 this, that, and the other." And then Jon Stewart said, "So," he says, "you think it's wrong to do that, but you don't think it's wrong what you're doing with gun control for the kids." And he said that is basically hypocrisy in its fullest way. This is what Jon Stewart was saying, where you don't think there's a problem with guns and schools, but you think there's a problem with someone being dressed up in a dress, pretending to be a woman, going into a school. And it just jumped at me, and I thought, well done to Jon Stewart, really, with that.
Yeah.
But so what advice would you give to people starting their own podcast?
Don't do it. No, I'm kidding.
You know how many times people say that as a joke?
Yeah. Do as much research as you possibly can. Do as much research, buy the right equipment. Yes, it is going to cost money. It's going to cost you a pretty penny. Especially if you want your show to sound right and do well as far as building your audience. And because when it comes to building an audience, nobody is going to want to listen to a crappy sounding podcast, and make sure you have an interesting topic. Make sure you're interesting and people like listening to you, that you have a good voice. That's all. Just keep it simple. It's going to cost money, and make sure you talk about interesting stuff.
I'm going to add to that that another good thing is, if you you will have social media, because you've got to promote these things as well, otherwise you don't get anybody listening. And a good thing about social media is, when you're on there, it's surprising, and I've said this numerous times, make friends with other podcasters.
Oh yeah.
Because the weird thing in there is, you'll think, coming into it fresh and not knowing how it works, you'll think that it's like most other corporate, or most other media or anything, where it'll be, oh, I'm not going to talk to them because they're competition. But
no.
In independent podcasting, there doesn't seem to be that. even if, because I'm friends with other people who make podcasts about podcasting, and we chat a lot. So I'll chat with Ariel Nissenblatt, who does, feedback with earbuds and shows like that. And we chat a lot, and I chat with a lot of these people. And that's the difference between in podcasting is where you can make friends like that, and they are really good advisors and people that will back you up as well, and they are there if you need them. It's the strangest thing, really, to be honest, on that, and get feedback from people who are doing essentially similar things to yourself.
Yeah. Because I've noticed that Twitter has an amazing independent podcast community. They're very supportive over on Twitter, and so make sure you create a Twitter account.
Yeah, and Instagram has a good one as well. I don't know what your what your Instagram's like. That seems to be a good social network as well. I don't think Facebook works very well for podcast. I don't know.
Facebook is good to drive your audience to once they're following you, once they listen to your show. Hey, it's like, hey, you want to follow more of us? You want to listen to more episodes? Head on over to our Facebook page.
Okay. Now, following what you said earlier on, I almost feel stupid saying this. What podcast do you listen to?
Like I said, I'm listening to my friends' shows. I listen to Dad's Worldwide. I listen to Dad in Rock. I used to listen to Jeff Needs Help, but Jeff Hunt, he retired from podcasting, so I'm not so much listening to that nowadays. But man, other than that, it's like I said, I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts.
I'm going to go on record now and say, if Stu from Stu World Order's listening, you need to contact John and get him on your show to talk about, a comic book movie, because Stu does a show where they talk about a different comic book movie each episode.
Awesome. And, set it up. I'll do it. Let's go.
Yep, absolutely. Because I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing, but I've been on before and we ended up, because you have to pick 3 numbers. Okay, and then he will tell you what those numbers equal, basically. Because he's got a number for each film or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And then he'll tell you what those 3 numbers are equal film wise, and then you have to pick which film out of those that you watch. And I ended up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
That's a good movie.
What is it? Yeah, that one where they go back in time, recording with him next week another episode about another shall we say, not giving anything away, but it's supposed to be a questionable quality film again, because I picked 3 questionable films again. I never get a good pick. But so where can people find you and get hold of you then, John?
Sure. You can find me on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's all at Basement Surge. It's all the same. So go check that out. If you want to stay up to date with what's actually coming out of the basement, you can follow me over on facebook.com/Basement Surge. So Facebook would be best.
Okay. All right. Thank you for speaking with me today, John.
So thank you for having me on. This was great.
Despite the signal problems. Anyway, you can find Pods Like Us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok just by looking up at Pods Like Us. And we're available through podslikeus@gmail.com. I'm going to send you that so you can send me the files. And we're also on Patreon if you want to go over there and get some extra bonus, out of episode chit chat and some extra episodes as well. But anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.